The massive screens across 1,000 worlds showed the same image. Emperor Kethavar stood tall on his crystal throne, his purple skin gleaming under the palace lights. His forearms spread wide as he spoke to the galaxy. Citizens of the Zephyrian Empire. His voice boomed through speakers on every planet. Today marks the end of the human threat. After 3 years of war, we have achieved total victory. Earth's colonies have fallen. Their fleets lie destroyed. Their homeworld sits trapped behind our blockade, cut off from the galaxy forever. Crowds cheered in the streets of the Empire's capital. Purple banners waved in the artificial wind. Children threw flower petals from tall buildings. The celebration would last for days. The humans thought they could challenge our ancient rule. The Emperor continued. They believed their crude weapons and savage tactics could defeat our superior technology. They were wrong. Humanity is finished. Their chapter in galactic history is closed. On the planet Xerion, families gathered around their communication devices. They had lost sons and daughters to human raiders 3 years ago. Now they could finally sleep peacefully. On the mining world of Dracos, workers stopped their shifts to listen. The humans had destroyed 2 of their orbital stations. Justice was finally served. But deep in space, where no Empire sensors could reach, something stirred in the corona of a dying star. The solar flames hit a ship that should not exist. The Defiance was supposed to be destroyed months ago, listed among the casualties at the Battle of Titan's Gate. Admiral Sarah Chen floated in the ship's command center, her gray hair tied back, her dark eyes fixed on the screen showing the Emperor's speech. Around her, the bridge crew worked in silence. They had all seen friends die. They had all lost everything they cared about. "Admiral," Lieutenant Jackson said quietly, "the Empire's communication channels are still broadcasting the victory celebration. They're calling us extinct." Chen smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Let them celebrate, Lieutenant. They earned it. They won every major battle. They took every colony. They scattered our fleets." She paused, watching the Emperor's image on the screen. "But they made one crucial mistake." "What's that, Admiral?" "They think the war is over." Through the ship's hull, the dying star's flames painted everything in red light. The Defiance was not alone. Hidden in the star's corona were dozens of other ships. Fighters, cruisers, supply vessels, and even 2 other dreadnoughts. They had been gathering here for weeks, using the star's radiation to mask their presence. These ships carried the survivors. Not just military personnel, but civilians too. Engineers, doctors, teachers, and farmers. Children who had never seen Earth but carried its memory in their hearts. They had all watched their worlds burn. They had all run when running was the only option left. But running was just the first step in humanity's real plan. Chen activated the ship's internal communication system. Her voice reached every person on every hidden vessel. "This is Admiral Chen. You've all heard the Emperor's speech. You've all seen the galaxy celebrate our death. Today the Zephyrian Empire declared victory over humanity." She paused, letting the words sink in. "They control our former colonies. They've captured our technology. They've killed millions of our people. By every measure of conventional warfare, they have won." In the ship's corridors, crew members stopped their work to listen. In the medical bay, doctors treating wounded soldiers looked up from their patients. In the fighter bays, pilots checked their weapons one more time. "But the Empire has forgotten something important," Chen continued. "They've forgotten the first rule of warfare that humanity learned long ago on our homeworld. It's not enough to defeat an enemy in battle. You must defeat them so completely that they never want to fight again." She pulled up tactical displays showing Empire shipping routes, supply lines, and patrol schedules. Her staff had been gathering this information for months, even while retreating from one defeat after another. "The Empire thinks we're finished because they destroyed our military. They think we're broken because they took our planets. They think we're defeated because we ran away." Chen's voice grew harder. "They're about to learn why humanity survived every predator on Earth. Why we crawled out of caves to reach the stars. Why every species in the galaxy should fear us when we're desperate." Lieutenant Jackson studied the tactical displays. The Empire's forces were already spreading out, taking up garrison positions on conquered worlds. They were switching from wartime production to peacetime economy. Their guard was coming down. "Admiral, what are your orders?" Chen turned away from the Emperor's image and faced her crew. Behind her, the dying star pulsed with ancient fire. "We're going to remind the Empire of the rule they forgot. The rule that separates humans from every other species in the galaxy." She activated another display, showing the locations of hidden supply caches scattered across 50 star systems. Each cache contained enough weapons and equipment to supply a small army. They had been placed during humanity's retreat, disguised as destroyed debris or hidden in asteroid fields. The Zephyrian Empire just declared victory, Chen said. But they forgot that humans don't fight to win battles. We fight to make sure our enemies never feel safe in their victory. We fight until they beg us to stop. We fight until they're willing to give us anything we want just to make the pain end. On the tactical display, red dots marked the locations of Empire convoys scheduled to pass through isolated systems in the next few days. Green dots showed the positions of human sleeper cells on conquered worlds, civilians who had stayed behind to appear defeated while secretly preparing for what came next. The Empire thinks the war is over, Chen continued. They're about to learn that for humanity the war doesn't end until we say it ends, and we haven't said it ends. She looked around the bridge at faces hardened by loss and determination. These people had watched their civilization burn. They had buried their friends and families. They had nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. Today begins the real war, Chen announced. Not the war where we try to hold territory or protect cities. The war where we make the Empire understand that victory over humanity comes with a price they can't afford to pay. The Emperor's speech was ending. Across the galaxy, Empire citizens were returning to their normal lives. Trade ships were resuming their routes. Garrison forces were settling into peacetime routines. The galaxy was moving on, believing the human threat was finished. They were wrong. In the corona of a dying star, Admiral Chen gave her final order of the day. All ships prepare for dispersal. Operation Ghost begins at midnight Empire Standard Time. Show them what happens when you kill a human's family and think the story is over. The hidden fleet began to move, scattering into the darkness between stars. The Empire had proclaimed victory, but humanity was about to begin teaching them the most important lesson in the galaxy. The lesson that would cost the Empire everything they thought they had won. The war was just beginning. 3 months had passed since the Empire's victory celebration. Life across the galaxy had returned to normal. Trade ships moved freely through space lanes that had been battlefields just months before. The Zephyrian military was reducing its size, shifting resources from warfare to peacekeeping. On the core world of Zentara, construction crews were already dismantling human infrastructure from captured colonies. Massive cargo ships hauled away human technology, weapons, and even furniture to be sold in Empire markets. The Emperor had declared that nothing of human origin would remain in civilized space, Captain Vextar commanded. One such salvage operation in the Outer Rim. His crew was stripping down a former human mining station when the first reports came in. A supply convoy had missed its scheduled arrival at the Kepler station. The delay was only 6 hours, nothing unusual for civilian shipping. Probably engine trouble, Vextar told his communications officer. These human systems are unreliable. The convoy will show up eventually, but the convoy never arrived. When Empire search teams found it 3 days later, they discovered something that made no sense. 12 cargo ships floating dead in space, their hulls intact but their crews missing. Every piece of valuable cargo was gone. The ship's computers showed no record of attack, no distress signals, no signs of struggle. The search team commander, Major Klexron, walked through the empty corridors of the lead cargo ship. The lights still worked. The air recycling systems hummed normally. Food was still warm in the crew quarters. It was as if everyone had simply vanished. "Sir," one of his soldiers called from the cargo bay. "You need to see this." The cargo bay was completely empty. Hundreds of tons of rare metals, construction equipment, and weapons had been there according to the shipping manifest. Now there was nothing but empty space and a single message painted on the metal wall in red letters. "We are not extinct." Major Klexron stared at the message. According to Empire intelligence, all human military forces had been destroyed. The few survivors were trapped on Earth behind an impenetrable blockade. There was no way humans could have done this. 2 weeks later, another incident occurred. A remote Empire outpost monitoring asteroid mining operations went silent during a routine check-in. When investigation teams arrived, they found the station intact but abandoned. The 40-person crew had vanished without a trace. All the station's valuable equipment was missing. This time, the message was different. "Your victory is an illusion." Emperor Kethvar received the reports in his crystal palace, surrounded by his advisors. His forearms moved with agitation as he read the details. "How is this possible?" he demanded. Our intelligence confirms that human military capability was completely destroyed. Their leadership is dead or captured. Their homeworld is isolated. General Thexmore, the Empire's highest military commander, studied the tactical displays. The attacks show sophisticated planning, Your Majesty. Whoever is doing this knows our shipping schedules, our patrol routes, and our security procedures. Are you suggesting that humans are still organized enough to conduct military operations? I'm suggesting we may have underestimated their survivors, Your Majesty. The Emperor's purple skin darkened with anger. Impossible. Our victory was complete. These are just desperate raiders, the last gasps of a dying species. Increase security on supply convoys and hunt them down. But the attacks continued to escalate. Over the next month, 7 more convoys disappeared. 5 remote outposts went silent. 3 Empire patrol ships were found drifting empty in space. Each incident left the same calling cards: missing crew, stolen equipment, and messages that grew bolder each time. We remember. This is only the beginning. You should have finished the job. On the Empire capital world, citizens began to notice changes. Shipping costs increased as more military escorts were assigned to protect civilian convoys. News reports mentioned isolated security incidents. In the Outer Rim, the celebration atmosphere from months before was fading into nervous concern. Captain Vex's TARS salvage operation received new orders: work faster and stay in groups. His crew was nervous, jumping at every sensor reading. The cheerful efficiency of the victory period was replaced by constant vigilance. Sir, his sensor operator called during a routine day. I'm detecting a ship approaching our position. Vextar checked his displays. According to Empire Traffic Control, no ships were scheduled in this sector. Can you identify it? Negative, sir. It's not responding to communications and its transponder is offline. The ship appeared on their visual screens, a small, dark vessel that moved with predatory grace. It matched no design in Empire databases. As they watched, more ships appeared around them, surrounding the salvage operation. All ships, this is Captain Vex's TAR, he broadcast on emergency frequencies. We are under attack by unknown vessels. Request immediate assistance. But the attacking ships did nothing. They simply waited in formation around the Empire vessels. Then a human voice came across the communication channels. Empire ships, this is Commander Torres of the Human Resistance. You have 2 minutes to evacuate your crews to escape pods before we board your vessels. Vextar's communications officer stared at his equipment in shock. Sir, that's impossible. Humans can't be operating ships in Empire space. They're all dead or trapped on Earth. Apparently not, Vextar replied grimly. He activated the general alert. All hands abandon ship. This is not a drill. The Empire crews fled in escape pods, watching as human boarding parties efficiently stripped their ships of everything valuable. The operation took less than an hour. When it was finished, the human ships vanished into space, leaving only empty hulls and another message painted on the flagship's hull. The Ghost Fleet remembers. Thousands of light years away, Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of the Defiance, reviewing reports from dozens of similar operations. Her scattered fleet had been busy, striking across 50 systems with surgical precision. Each attack was carefully planned to maximize psychological impact while minimizing Empire casualties. Lieutenant Jackson approached with the latest intelligence reports. Admiral, Empire forces are increasing security patrols. They're pulling ships from garrison duty to escort convoys. Chen smiled. Good. The more resources they waste on security, the less they have for everything else. What's the status of our sleeper cells? Active on 37 worlds. They're reporting that Empire civilians are starting to ask questions about these security incidents. Some planets are requesting additional protection. Chen studied the tactical displays. The Empire controlled thousands of worlds across hundreds of star systems. Protecting all of them simultaneously was impossible, especially against an enemy that struck without warning and vanished before reinforcements could arrive. The Empire declared victory because they won every conventional battle, Chen said. They controlled territory, destroyed fleets, and captured planets. But they forgot the most important part of warfare. What's that, Admiral? The war doesn't end when you win. It ends when your enemy accepts that they've lost. Chen activated the communication system to address her scattered fleet. All ships, this is Admiral Chen. Phase 1 is complete. The Empire now knows we exist. They know we're not defeated. They know we can strike anywhere, anytime. She paused, looking out at the stars where her people were fighting a war the Empire didn't even understand yet. Phase 2 begins tomorrow. It's time to show them what happens when you think you've killed all the humans. The attacks were no longer isolated incidents. Across the Empire, the Ghost Fleet had become a nightmare that haunted every space lane. What had started as mysterious disappearances of supply convoys had grown into systematic warfare that struck fear into the heart of Zephyrian civilization. Major Klexron stood in the command center of Fortress Station, one of the Empire's most heavily defended military bases. Even here, deep in Empire core territory, the walls felt thin. In the past month, human raiders had struck facilities that should have been impossible to reach. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "the cargo convoy from Zarian is 3 hours overdue." Klexron felt his stomach tighten. Every delayed shipment now carried the possibility of finding another empty convoy floating in space. "Have you attempted contact?" "Yes, sir." No response on any frequency. "Dispatch 2 patrol ships to investigate. Full combat readiness." The patrol ships found the convoy 6 hours later, drifting near an asteroid field. All 12 cargo vessels were intact but abandoned. Their crews had vanished along with every piece of valuable cargo. This time, the human message was painted across the hull of the lead ship in letters 10 meters tall. "Your soldiers cannot protect you." On the Empire capital world, Emperor Kethvar faced his council in emergency session. The crystal palace that had once seemed invincible now felt exposed. Just last week, human commandos had somehow infiltrated the orbital defense platforms and stolen 3 months' worth of military supplies. "The attacks are becoming bolder," General Thexmore reported. "They're no longer limiting themselves to remote convoys. Yesterday they hit a supply depot only 50 light-years from the capital. Admiral Fenkar, the Empire's naval commander, spread tactical displays across the conference table. Red marks showed recent attack sites scattered across the galaxy. The pattern makes no sense. They strike deep in our territory, then vanish completely. Our tracking systems show no trace of how they move between systems." Emperor Kethvar studied the displays with growing frustration. His forearms clenched and unclenched as he processed the scale of the problem. How many humans can there be? Our intelligence reported that their population was reduced to a few million survivors trapped on Earth. "That's what we believed, Your Majesty," Thexmore replied carefully. "But these operations require sophisticated planning, advanced ships, and detailed knowledge of our security procedures. Either our intelligence was wrong or what? Or the humans were better prepared for this war than we realized." The discussion was interrupted by an urgent communication from the palace security chief. "Your Majesty, we're receiving a transmission on all Empire frequencies. The source is unknown, but the signal is coming from everywhere at once." The main display activated, showing the face of a human woman with gray hair and determined eyes. Behind her, the bridge of a warship hummed with activity. Admiral Chen looked directly into the camera as if she could see the Emperor himself. "Greetings, Emperor Kethvar," she said calmly. "I am Admiral Sarah Chen of the Human Resistance Fleet. You declared us extinct 3 months ago. You celebrated our defeat. You told the galaxy that humanity was finished." The Emperor leaned forward in his throne, his purple skin darkening with rage. "This is impossible. Our blockade of Earth is impenetrable. No human ships could have escaped." Chen smiled as if she could hear his thoughts. "You assumed we would fight your war by your rules for your objectives. You thought we would stand and defend fixed positions, protecting territory and infrastructure like civilized species do. You were wrong." The display shifted to show tactical information, shipping routes, patrol schedules, and supply depot locations. All Empire classified data. "While you were destroying our colonies and capturing our planets, we were preparing for the real war," Chen continued. "Not the war where we try to hold ground, but the war where we make holding ground meaningless. You control our former worlds, but you cannot control the space between them." General Thexmore stood abruptly. "Your Majesty, this transmission is being broadcast across the entire galaxy. Every world, every ship, every communication network is receiving this." Chen's image continued speaking. "The Zephyrian Empire believes that victory means controlling territory. Humans learned long ago that victory means controlling the cost of that control. You can garrison our former colonies, but you cannot garrison every supply ship. You can patrol the major space lanes, but you cannot patrol the void between stars." The display showed images of human ships emerging from hiding places that should not exist. Asteroid fields, Nebulae, the radiation shadows of dead stars. Dozens of vessels, all bearing the scars of battle but still operational. Every ship you see was reported destroyed in your victory reports, Chen said. Every crew member was listed among your confirmed kills. We let you believe we were finished while we repositioned for the war we intended to fight. The war where we make victory so expensive that you'll beg us to let you surrender. Emperor Kethavar activated his own communication system. Human Admiral, your resistance is futile. Even if you have more ships than we believed, you cannot match the Empire's military might. You cannot hold territory or protect populations. What can you possibly hope to achieve? Chen's smile grew colder. We're not trying to hold territory, Emperor. We're trying to make you understand why every predator on Earth learned to fear humans, why every species in the galaxy should fear us when you back us into a corner. We're going to teach you the doctrine that made humanity the most dangerous species ever to leave its homeworld. What doctrine? The doctrine of endless war. The principle that it's not enough to defeat an enemy. You must defeat them so completely that they never want to fight again. You declared victory over humanity, but you forgot to make us accept that defeat. The transmission switched to show coordinated attacks happening across the galaxy in real time. Empire facilities on dozens of worlds were burning. Supply convoys were under assault in 50 different systems simultaneously. The scale of the operation was staggering. This is the human way of war, Chen explained as the attacks continued. We don't fight to win battles. We fight to make the cost of victory unbearable. Every supply ship you lose costs more than the cargo it carried. Every facility you have to rebuild weakens your economy. Every extra guard you post reduces your ability to control the territory you conquered. Admiral Fenkar was frantically checking communication channels. Your Majesty, we're receiving reports of attacks on 37 different worlds. Our response fleets are scattered across the galaxy. We cannot defend everything simultaneously. Chen seemed to know what was happening in the palace conference room. You're realizing the truth now, aren't you, Emperor? You have more territory to defend than you have ships to defend it. Every world you control is a potential target. Every supply route is a vulnerability. Every civilian transport is a hostage to our goodwill. The Emperor's rage was building to dangerous levels. You cannot sustain this level of warfare indefinitely, human. You are outnumbered 1,000 to 1. Numbers don't matter when you're fighting the right war, Chen replied. We don't need to match your fleet ship for ship. We only need to make you spend more resources defending what you've taken than those territories are worth. And we have centuries of experience in making our enemies' victories too expensive to keep. The transmission began showing something that chilled the Empire leadership to their cores. Recruitment videos from human sleeper cells on conquered worlds. Ordinary civilians, people who had seemed to accept Empire rule, were revealing themselves as resistance fighters. They had been preparing for this moment for months. You thought conquering our worlds meant defeating our people, Chen said. You forgot that humans don't stay defeated. We adapt, we survive, we find ways to turn our enemies' strengths into their weaknesses. Every world you occupy is now a potential base for our operations. The scale of humanity's preparation became clear. Hidden weapons caches, secret communication networks, and underground factories scattered across 50 star systems, all built during the Empire's victory period while their guard was down. This is why you should have listened to your own legends about humanity, Chen concluded. We're the species that survived ice ages, predators, plagues, and wars that should have destroyed us. We're the species that turned every setback into a setup for comeback. You declared victory over us, but you forgot the most important rule of warfare against humans. What rule? The Emperor demanded. Chen's image smiled one final time before the transmission ended. Never wound what you cannot kill. Because wounded humans don't retreat. They learn, they adapt, and they make sure their enemies regret not finishing the job. The display went dark, leaving the Empire leadership in stunned silence. Across the galaxy, human resistance cells were rising up on conquered worlds. The Ghost Fleet was striking targets faster than Empire forces could respond. The cost of maintaining their victory was already exceeding the value of what they had won. The real war had begun. 6 months after Admiral Chen's galaxy-wide broadcast, the Zephyrian Empire was hemorrhaging resources at an unsustainable rate. What had begun as isolated attacks had evolved into a coordinated campaign that threatened the very foundation of imperial civilization. Finance Minister Quantel stood before Emperor Kethavar in the Crystal Palace, his hands shaking as he presented the economic reports. The numbers told a story of slow-motion catastrophe. Your Majesty, the cost of securing our trade routes has increased by 400%, he reported. We're now assigning military escorts to every civilian convoy, but the humans are still finding ways to strike. Last week alone, we lost 8 cargo vessels worth billions of credits. The Emperor's 4 arms drummed against his throne in frustration. What about the conquered human territories? Surely they're generating enough revenue to offset these security costs. Quantel hesitated before answering. Actually, Your Majesty, the human worlds are costing us more to maintain than they're producing. The resistance activities require constant military presence. We have more soldiers stationed on those worlds than we had during the original invasion. Around the palace, the sounds of construction echoed through the halls. Human saboteurs had somehow penetrated the capital's defenses 3 times in the past month, forcing expensive repairs and security upgrades. The palace that had once seemed like an untouchable symbol of imperial power now felt like a fortress under siege. General Thexmore entered the throne room with additional grim news. Your Majesty, the hegemony of Kellogg's is formally requesting a review of their trade agreements with us. They claim that shipping costs have made commerce too expensive to continue. This was exactly what Emperor Kethavar had feared. The Empire's economy depended on trade with dozens of client species. If those relationships began to collapse, the entire imperial system would be at risk. What reason did they give? They say that ensuring cargo shipments through Empire space has become prohibitively expensive due to human attacks. Several other species have made similar complaints. The Emperor stood and walked to the massive windows overlooking his capital city. Below, he could see the effects of humanity's campaign. Military checkpoints at every major intersection, armed patrols in commercial districts, citizens hurrying between buildings instead of enjoying leisurely walks. The victory celebration from months ago felt like a distant memory. How many humans can there possibly be? He demanded. Our intelligence estimates put their surviving population at less than 50 million. How can so few cause such widespread disruption? Admiral Fenkar, who had been studying tactical reports, looked up from his displays. Your Majesty, I believe we've been asking the wrong question. It's not about how many humans there are. It's about how they're fighting. Explain. Traditional warfare focuses on controlling territory and destroying enemy forces. The humans aren't trying to do either. They're fighting what they call asymmetric warfare, using their mobility and knowledge of our systems against our need to defend fixed positions. Fenkar activated a holographic display showing the galaxy. Red dots marked recent attack sites, scattered across hundreds of star systems with no apparent pattern. They strike where we're weak, then disappear before we can respond. We send ships to protect a convoy, so they attack an undefended depot. We reinforce the depot so they hit civilian infrastructure. We're always reactive, always responding to their initiative. The Emperor studied the display with growing understanding. You're saying they're making us fight their war instead of ours? Exactly, Your Majesty. And their war is designed to be unwinnable for us. Every target we protect requires resources. Every attack we prevent costs money and personnel. Meanwhile, they operate from hidden bases that we can't find and attack targets we can't predict. The conversation was interrupted by urgent communication from the Empire's intelligence service. Director Hexler appeared on the main screen, his expression grave. Your Majesty, we've discovered something disturbing about the human resistance operations. They're not random attacks. There's a systematic pattern designed to achieve specific economic and political objectives. What kind of objectives? They're targeting our most profitable trade routes first, forcing us to divert expensive military resources to protect low-value cargo. They're attacking infrastructure that's costly to replace, but doesn't provide immediate military advantage. And they're timing their operations to maximize psychological impact on our civilian population. The Emperor's skin darkened to deep purple. You're telling me that these human survivors are conducting economic warfare? It's more sophisticated than that, Your Majesty. According to intercepted communications, they're following something they call the doctrine of exhaustion. The goal isn't to defeat our military forces directly. It's to make maintaining our victory so expensive that we voluntarily give up what we conquered. This revelation sent shockwaves through the palace. The Empire had never faced an enemy that fought this way. Every previous war had been about territorial control, technological superiority, or raw military strength. The humans were fighting a completely different kind of conflict. Finance Minister Quantel pulled up additional economic projections. Your Majesty, if current trends continue, the cost of maintaining security will exceed our total Imperial revenue within 18 months. We'll be spending more to hold the human territories than those territories could possibly produce. General Thexmore was receiving reports from garrison commanders across the Empire. The situation is deteriorating on multiple fronts. Human resistance cells are becoming active on worlds we've held for years. Our troops report that civilian populations who seemed cooperative are now providing intelligence to the resistance. How is that possible? The humans planted sleeper agents during their retreat, Your Majesty. People who appeared to be refugees or surrendering civilians, but were actually trained resistance operatives. They've been organizing underground networks for months. The scale of humanity's preparation was becoming clear. This wasn't desperate improvisation by survivors. It was a carefully planned campaign that had been in development since the early stages of the war. The humans had never intended to win through conventional military means. Admiral Fenkar was studying intelligence reports about human operations. Your Majesty, we're intercepting communications that suggest the humans call this Phase 2 of their resistance. They're preparing for something they refer to as Phase 3. What could be worse than what they're already doing? Before anyone could answer, alarms began sounding throughout the palace. Security Chief Veltron's voice echoed through the communication system. All personnel to emergency stations. We have confirmed human infiltrators in the palace complex. The Emperor and his advisors moved quickly to the secure command bunker, deep beneath the palace. As they descended through layers of armor and defensive systems, explosions could be heard above them. Emergency lighting cast eerie shadows on the walls. How did they get through our defenses? The Emperor demanded. Veltron was coordinating the security response from multiple screens showing the palace complex. Unknown, Your Majesty. They appeared simultaneously in 12 different locations. Our sensors didn't detect their approach. Through the security feeds, they could see human commandos moving through the palace with professional efficiency. They weren't trying to cause maximum damage. They were targeting specific systems and leaving messages behind. The attack lasted only 30 minutes, but the psychological impact was devastating. The humans had penetrated the heart of Imperial power, struck at will, and disappeared without a trace. They left behind a single message painted in the Emperor's private chambers. Phase 3 begins tomorrow. As security teams swept the palace for additional threats, Emperor Kethvar faced the terrible reality of his situation. The Empire's victory over humanity was costing more to maintain than defeat would have cost to accept. Their client species were beginning to question the value of Imperial protection. Their military was spread thin across a galaxy of potential targets. Your Majesty, General Thexmore said quietly, some of my commanders are suggesting that we consider alternative options. What kind of alternatives? Negotiation, Your Majesty. Opening diplomatic channels with the human resistance. Perhaps we can reach some kind of arrangement that ends this conflict without further escalation. The Emperor's rage flared. Negotiate? With defeated survivors who should be grateful we allowed them to live? Never. But even as he spoke the words, Emperor Kethvar knew that his options were shrinking. The humans had demonstrated that they could strike anywhere, anytime. They had shown that his victory could be made meaningless through pure persistence and planning. The Empire had won every battle, but the humans were winning the war, and tomorrow, Phase 3 would begin. Phase 3 began at exactly midnight, Empire Standard Time, across 12 major star systems simultaneously. The attacks were unlike anything the Empire had faced before. Not random strikes against shipping or isolated facilities, but coordinated assaults against the symbolic heart of Imperial power. On the capital world, Emperor Kethvar was awakened by explosions that shook the very foundations of his crystal palace. The massive structure that had stood for 1,000 years, built to showcase the eternal nature of Imperial rule, was under direct assault by human forces that shouldn't exist. Security Chief Veltron's voice crackled through the emergency communication system. Your Majesty, we have human ground forces inside the palace perimeter. I repeat, enemy forces have breached the inner defenses. The Emperor rushed to his private command center where displays showed the scope of the attack. Human commandos were systematically destroying the palace's most important symbolic chambers. The Hall of Conquered Worlds, the Gallery of Imperial Victories, and the Archive of Defeated Species. How many attackers? The Emperor demanded. Unknown, Your Majesty. They're using stealth technology we've never encountered. Our sensors show enemy contacts everywhere and nowhere. It's as if they're ghosts. Through the security feeds, the Emperor watched human soldiers placing carefully targeted explosives throughout his palace. They weren't trying to kill civilians or cause random destruction. Every target was chosen for maximum symbolic impact. The magnificent crystal throne room, where he had declared victory over humanity 9 months ago, erupted in a controlled detonation that brought down half the ceiling. The ancient pillars carved with the names of conquered species cracked and fell. The crystal throne itself remained intact, but surrounded by rubble that made its emptiness clear. General Thexmore burst into the command center with reports from across the galaxy. Your Majesty, this isn't just happening here. Human forces are simultaneously attacking government centers on 11 other core worlds. They're targeting symbols of imperial authority everywhere. The Emperor stared at the tactical displays in growing horror. The attacks were perfectly coordinated across impossible distances, striking at the exact moment when they would cause maximum psychological damage. It was as if the humans had planned every detail months in advance. "Sir," Veltron reported, "the attackers are broadcasting a message on all palace communication channels." Admiral Chen's face appeared on the main screen. She was standing in what looked like the Emperor's own private study, surrounded by the artifacts he had collected from conquered worlds. Behind her, human soldiers were methodically destroying the displays that celebrated imperial victories. "Emperor Kethvar," she said calmly, "welcome to Phase 3. For 9 months, you've been learning what it costs to hold territory against an enemy that refuses to stay defeated. Tonight you learn what it costs to claim victory over a species that doesn't accept surrender." The Emperor activated his own communication system, his voice shaking with rage. "You dare attack the Imperial capital? You dare defile the sacred palace? Your species will pay for this insult with extinction." Chen smiled without warmth. "Extinction? You already tried that, remember? You declared us extinct 9 months ago. You celebrated our defeat. You told the galaxy that humanity was finished." She gestured to the destruction around her. "How's that working out for you?" Behind her, another explosion brought down a wall containing portraits of every emperor in Zephyrian history. 1,000-year-old artwork turned to dust and rubble. "You're wondering how we got here," Chen continued. "How we penetrated defenses that took centuries to build. How we coordinate attacks across dozens of star systems without you detecting our communications. The answer is simple. We're fighting a different war than the one you think you're in." She walked through the palace corridors as if she owned them, past priceless artifacts and historical treasures that were being systematically destroyed by her soldiers. You fight wars to gain territory, to control resources, to dominate other species. Humans fight wars to teach lessons. And the lesson we're teaching you tonight is the most important one our species ever learned. The Emperor's security forces were finally responding, but they seemed to be fighting shadows. Every time they cornered human attackers, the enemies would vanish or appear behind them. The palace's defensive systems were useless against an enemy that seemed to know every secret passage and hidden entrance. "What lesson?" the Emperor demanded. Chen stopped in front of a massive window overlooking the capital city. Below, explosions were lighting up the night sky as human forces struck targets across the metropolitan area. Not civilian targets, government buildings, military headquarters, and symbols of imperial authority. "The lesson that it's not enough to defeat an enemy," she said. "You have to defeat them so completely that they never want to fight again. You have to make them understand in their bones that continuing the conflict will cost them everything they value." The display shifted to show the scope of the night's operations. Human forces were simultaneously attacking imperial government centers on dozens of worlds. The symbolic heart of the empire was being torn apart in a single coordinated campaign. "For 9 months, we've been showing you what happens when you think you've won a war against humanity. We've made your victory too expensive to maintain. We've turned your conquered territory into a burden that drains your resources. We've made your own people question whether their security is worth the cost." Finance Minister Quantel was frantically checking economic reports. "Your Majesty, the stock markets are collapsing. Imperial bonds are in free fall. Our client species are demanding emergency sessions to review their trade agreements." Chen seemed to know what was happening throughout the empire. "Tonight, we complete the lesson. We show the galaxy that the mighty Zephyrian Empire cannot even protect its own capital from a species they declared extinct. We demonstrate that your victory is an illusion, maintained only by force that can be broken by superior planning and determination." The Emperor watched his palace burning and felt something he had never experienced before. The cold touch of defeat. Not military defeat. His armies were still intact, his fleet still controlled space. But defeat of a deeper kind. The realization that everything he thought he had won was slipping away. "What do you want?" he asked quietly. Chen's expression softened slightly. "What every species in the galaxy wants, Emperor. The right to exist, the right to determine our own future, the right to be left alone. You could have had peace with humanity 9 months ago. Instead, you chose to celebrate our destruction." She walked to the Emperor's private communication center and activated the galaxy-wide broadcasting system. Her image and voice would now reach every world in known space. "Citizens of the galaxy," she announced. "Tonight you've witnessed the final phase of humanity's response to the Zephyrian Empire's declaration of victory. For 9 months we've demonstrated that declaring victory over an enemy is meaningless, unless that enemy accepts defeat." The transmission showed images from across the Empire. Burning government buildings, fleeing officials, and the obvious helplessness of Imperial forces against human tactics. The Empire proclaimed our extinction. But we're still here. They celebrated our defeat, but we're still fighting. They thought they had won a war, but they had only won battles. Tonight, we finished teaching them the difference. Emperor Kethvar realized that his advisors were all looking at him with the same expression. Desperate hope that he would find a way to end this nightmare. The cost of continuing the conflict was becoming unbearable, but the cost of admitting defeat seemed impossible to accept. Chen seemed to read his thoughts through the screen. "The choice is yours, Emperor. You can continue this war until it destroys everything you've built, or you can acknowledge what every military leader in the galaxy is thinking right now, that humanity has proven its point." "What point?" "That declaring victory over humans is easy, making humans accept that victory is impossible." The transmission ended, leaving the Emperor alone with his burning palace and his broken illusions. Outside, the sounds of battle were fading as human forces completed their mission and vanished back into the night. General Thexmore approached hesitantly. "Your Majesty, we're receiving surrender offers from 3 client species. They say they cannot afford to be associated with an empire that cannot protect itself. Admiral Fenkar was monitoring military communications. Our fleet commanders are requesting new orders, Your Majesty. They want to know if we're escalating to total war or seeking alternative solutions." Emperor Kethvar stood in the ruins of his throne room, surrounded by the debris of his shattered victory. The crystal throne still stood, but everything around it spoke of defeat. The Empire could continue fighting, but everyone in the room knew the truth that Chen had demonstrated. They had declared victory over humanity, but humanity had never accepted that defeat. And until they did, the war would continue, growing more expensive and destructive with each passing day. The Empire had won every battle, but the humans had won the war. It was time to learn the difference.